NHL preview time as the season gets closer and closer. We had rookie Young Star Classic tournament thingies happening all weekend, still happening out in Penticton with the Calgary Flames and all the other teams that are participating in that event. And so you go from that to training camp, and we go from training camp to preseason games, and we get excited about preseason games for about an hour, and then they're preseason games, and we don't care. And then we want to get the regular season going, and then we finally do. And so what I'm saying is the season's going to be here before we know it. And so today we are looking at the overvalued players and teams for the NHL. I'm realizing now I didn't copy over the players part into my notes, but we'll work with that. So we'll start with the teams, shall we? This is one, I know I was on Sportsnet 960 earlier this morning. I hyped it up as these are the overrated teams in the NHL. This first one I don't think is overrated. I'm basing overvalued off of points projections, and so I am sorry for my local audience here. It's the Calgary Flames. I don't think anyone's overrating them. I think the only people who are overrating them are the fine folks out in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the odds makers. The Flames' point total for over-under betting this year is 80.5. The Flames last year finished with 81 points. And that is a season where you got at least part or all of the season with Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, Shillington, Markstrom, Zadorov, Mangiapane. All of whom not there. All of whom have been replaced by Anthony Mantha and Jake Bean. And so, yes, I do think that there is reason for optimism in Calgary, but not for results this year. I was flabbergasted to see the Flames at 80.5. I think that this is going to be a year of growth. I think it's going to be a year of development, but I also think it's going to be a year of maybe a little bit of bad hockey, especially on that blue line. I have great concerns about what this team is going to look like defensively this year. And when you have a basically rookie goalie behind a defense that has like two legitimate NHL defensemen on it, I don't know how this team gets above 500 this season. So again, I think we are going to come out of this season feeling positively about the Calgary Flames, but it's not going to be because they had a 500 season. I think that's... I was stunned by that. And so I know my audience tends to be a little bit more Calgary Flames leaning. And so if y'all in the chat want to let me know what I'm missing, that this team could get to a 500 record, I don't see it at all. Coming in at number 2, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Their total is at 90.5. They were at 88 points last year. Does anyone think the Penguins improved this offseason? I don't. I think that they have done actually a very bad job of building up around Sidney Crosby again. And you got one of the best Sidney Crosby seasons you could possibly expect last year, and still 88 points. And it's another year of wear on Karlsson, on Letang, on Malkin, on all these guys. The goaltending issue, I don't think has been figured out. This is not a talented hockey team. And I think a lot of teams in the East got better. And I feel like a lot of teams in the East have passed by the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so I really do think that this is a year where the Penguins fall off. And I get part of the reason why they are at 90.5 is they are a what you would call a public team. But still, this is insane. So I think they are one of the... And honestly, I put Calgary up there first because they were the first odds that I came to, honestly. I think Pittsburgh is probably the most overrated team in the NHL going into this season. And I don't know if it's that close. Up next, it is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They replaced Stamkos with Gensel. And I don't think people realize how much of a step back that is. It does seem to make, and look, long-term, maybe it does make sense. But one of the things we talked about in the accountability episode is we need to not overvalue what we think of some decisions long-term and apply those to the short term. And the main lesson of that was the Lindholm and Zadorov contracts, where I think that they are just absolute disasters long-term for Boston. But that's going to make them better this year. On the other side, long-term, getting a substantially younger Jake Gensel into the lineup instead of Steven Stamkos. Long-term, makes sense. Short-term, I think it's a step back. Stamkos scored 40 goals, I think it's 2 of the last 3 seasons, and 41 goals last year. Gensel didn't come close to that. I think Gensel is fine, but I don't think Gensel is a takeover games in the way that Steven Stamkos was. I think Gensel is maybe a bit more of a complementary piece than than people assume that he is. And no, like, I don't think Stamkos is going out there 1-on-5 and creating his goals. I think he got a lot of help from guys who are going to help Gensel out. And so I think Gensel probably has a good year, but I think that this is a step back for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, they have not looked threatening in a couple of years. And I think that it is going to be another season like that. So for them to get to 98.5, this could be a 95-point team and we still win this. So yeah, under 98.5 on Tampa Bay. I think that is way overvalued. Up next is Washington at 89.5. I just don't think they're that good. I think that so much of their focus is going to be on just spam feeding OV one-timers. I think they got a boost from trading some veteran players and some youth into the lineup last year, but I do think that they are going to take a step back. I think the league isn't going to be surprised by them. Maybe Liljegren is just the guy between the pipes and off Washington goes. But I don't look at this roster as a good one. I think the Mangiapane trade is not going to help them as much as they think. I think having Pierre-Luc Dubois there, we haven't seen that he helps a ton. I think that is kind of a net negative. And so I worry about Washington. I don't think they're going to be that good. And the last one is San Jose. 64.5 is tough to call a team overrated on. That's a 17-point bump from last year. And they do. They were historically bad last year. And they have better players this year. With Celebrini and Toffoli and who was it? Was it Barclay Goodrow that they claimed off waivers? They have added some good players to this team, for sure. But not a 17-point improvement, I don't think. I think that this is going to be kind of similar to the Bears in the NFL, where they may not have, like, they will feel better than a 65-point team, but they won't literally be a 65-point team. Deeds in the chat. How dare you, PK? Dubas is well known for building around his star players. Okay, can't keep a straight face. No, you're right. I gave Dubas so many benefits of the doubt, right? Yeah, with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I wanted to believe that accumulating that amount of talent would lead to success. And it very obviously hasn't. And so he has learned exactly nothing from that. The depth on this team is not built up well. He has not done anything to help supplement things around Sidney Crosby. This is a poorly constructed roster. And you could give Dubas a pass in year one because it was year one, and he's just trying to figure everything out. He goes out and acquires Erik Karlsson for no good goddamn reason. But now it's your fault. And now you need to fix it. And he hasn't fixed it at all. Okay, so now, just quickly, overvalued players. This isn't going to be a big fantasy hockey podcast this year. It's just, that one is not in the wheelhouse. So if I can get some guests sometimes to help with that, then yes. But in terms of my quick analysis on these things, fantasy football is going to be a bigger part of this show for sure. But just quickly, overvalued players in the NHL this year in fantasy. Evander Kane comes in at 5, ahead of Blake Coleman, Scheifele, Patrick Kane, and Clayton Keller. I'm basing these off of NHL.com fantasy ratings, and we all know how good NHL.com is at making lists, so maybe I shouldn't be. But I think Evander Kane is just showing more and more that he's falling off. And I get, like, in fantasy hockey, you get things for hits and stuff like that, but you kind of got to catch guys to hit them, and I don't think he's going to be able to do that a whole lot this year. So I do not have faith that Evander Kane is going to be able to put up a whole lot for Edmonton this season. And so him ahead of guys like Blake Coleman, who I think will have a bigger part of the Calgary offense this year and still does like the hits and all of those things that can help, is insanity to me. Number 4 and 3 are kind of together. It's Georgiev and Stuart Skinner at 51 and 52. But like Georgiev is just kind of meh. And so to have him in the 50s, I feel like at that point, you may as well just try to like stream goalies or something, because that feels like a waste of a pick to me. And Stuart Skinner, like, yes, he has an amazing bounce back in the playoffs and rides that wave to within one game of the Stanley Cup championship. He was pulled in the playoffs and also was horrendous at times in the regular season. And so to just assume that he is going to have this bounce back and be everything that you want him to be, I don't see that. So I think those guys in the 50s are quite insane. At 2, it's John Tavares. 62nd overall. Again, ranked ahead of Stützle, Zibanejad, and Tage Thompson. And Tavares, I don't think is really going to be a guy who fills up other parts of the stat sheet. I think he is very obviously slowing down. I think there is a lot of concern about what's happening with this team in terms of some of the other star players. He loses the captaincy. And so I think to have him over a Tage Thompson, who puts up mega points, and Zibanejad and Stützle, I don't see it. And then at number 1, it is Jake Gensel, 31st overall in fantasy. Again, I think he's going to a good situation, so that helps. But I think part of it is I just don't think he is as good as everyone else around the league thinks he is. I don't see it in the ways that other people do with him. And so that is why I'm just out on Jake Gensel and on Tampa Bay this season.